The Torah tells us in this week's Parashat Noach, that Noah and his family leave the ark. They come back to the world, in a sense, to recreate the world. And there's a disturbing story that's found in the 9th chapter of Breshit, which begins with Vayachal Noach ish adama vayita karem. Noach, the tiller of the soil, planted a vineyard. He was the first to plant a vineyard. However, Vayesh min hayayin vayishkar vayigal b'toch ha'lo, he drank of the wine, became drunk, and uncovered himself, or became uncovered in his tent. Then we have a strange story. The Torah tells us that Ham, the father of Canaan, Ra'ah et ervat aviv, saw his father's nakedness. Seeing nakedness could be a euphemism for something else. It appears that way elsewhere in the Torah. And he told his two brothers, Vayaged l'shnei achav bachutz, and the other two brothers, Shem and Yefet, hearing about their father's situation, says the Torah, took a cloth, a simla, placed it on their shoulders, walked in backwards, covered their father's nakedness, and they did not see their father. Vayiketz Noach b'yeino. Noah woke up from his drunkenness, from his wine. Vayeta et asher asalo b'no hakatan. He knew what his youngest son had done. We don't know exactly what he did. He did something. Vayomer arur Canaan, and he cursed Canaan. Eved avadim yeliacha vayomer Baruch Hashem Elohei Shem vi Canaan eved lamo. What does Noah do when he wakes up? He knows, Vayeda, he curses and he blesses. I think that the significance of the story of Noach, I believe, is the following. Noach gets drunk. It's not clear from the Chumash as to this is intentional, or simply an act of negligence, or maybe he doesn't know that wine can induce drunkenness. But it strikes me that the context of the story suggests to us that it's not just an accident. He gets drunk after he departs from the ark, and after he has witnessed the destruction of the entire world. It is very striking that just a few chapters later we're told the story about Lot, Abraham's nephew, who flees from Sodom, and the town of Sodom and the other nearby towns have been utterly destroyed. In fact, his daughters believe the world has come to an end, and they get their father drunk, says the Torah. They give their father wine. And it strikes me that in the case of Noach, the getting drunk could be a response to witnessing destruction. In the case of Noach, it could be a response as well to the fact that upon Noach has been placed the responsibility to govern the earth. Just a bit earlier, God said to Noach that you are responsible for the world. It's what the Talmud calls the 7 Noachide laws. In the text of the Torah, they don't appear to be 7, but one of them is certainly explicit in the Chumash. Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam damo yishafech. Whoever sheds the blood of a human, through a human shall his blood be shed. That's the simple reading of the text, of one of the readings of that verse. And it means that what God says to Noach, you are now responsible for this world. And Noach's response to the responsibility is to get drunk. And something happens to Noach after this destruction. And he wakes up. And in this turning point, what does Noach do? He who has witnessed destruction, he blesses and he curses. He doesn't curse the whole world. He curses those that deserve to be cursed because they've done something very wrong. But he also blesses those that deserve a blessing. Cursing and blessing in the book of Genesis, that was God's prerogative and God's behavior in the beginning of the book of Genesis. God blesses the fish. God blesses the human. God blesses the world. God blesses the Sabbath. God curses the snake. God curses the earth on account of the human sin. So that's how God governed the world. In Noah's blessing and cursing, what Noah is saying is, I am assuming responsibility for the world. He wakes up from his stupor and he realizes that this is his world. He's responsible for it. That's what God said to him. You are now the responsible person for your world. And Noah responds admirably. His parallel later in Genesis, Lot, he never wakes up from his drunkenness. We never hear about Lot. But unlike Lot, in chapter 19, in the 9th chapter, Noah wakes up. And Noah says Blessed is the God of Shem. The Torah then traces the lineage of Shem to Abraham. Shem shall subjugate Canaan. Canaan represents the evil. And later in the Torah, God says to Abraham, the 10th generation after Noah, through Shem, Lechacha meyartzecha, Abraham, go forth. Your responsibility is to fulfill the blessing that Noah, that your great-great-great-grandfather gave the world. That the forces of good, positive forces, shall subjugate the negative forces. He cannot eved lamo. It's interesting that Noah is the one actually in the Torah who sets up the land of Canaan as a sacred space, as a place where it's possible to walk together with God. That was Abraham's charge later. So Vayeda, Noach woke up from his wine in this heroic gesture. He curses and he blesses. He assumes God's role in the book of Genesis. Shabbat Shalom.